What's up, y'all? I don't know if you got the memo, but we already planning for summertime shy around here, and I've got the first event you need to add to your list. Moats Entertainment presents Out and Amplified Night of Queer Music. This unforgettable evening will feature 3 groundbreaking artists, including Vincent, Parson James, and John Duff. Plus, you'll see queer local DJs from right here in the city, including bodybuilding drag queen Miss Toto and house disco techno artist Icy Baby. Catch Out and Amplified Night of Queer Music at the Riviera Theater on Friday, June 20th. Doors open at 6 and the show starts at 7:30. You can get your tickets at moatsevents.live/tickets. Today on CityCast Chicago, you want to know what some of my favorite Southside restaurants, places like Brown Sugar Bakery, Majani Soul Food, Vegan Cafe, and Lim's Barbecue all have in common? Well, besides the award-winning food and all the money I've dropped over the years, they're part of a growing cohort of restaurants and caterers demanding the Southside gets the dining respect it's been long due. It's Wednesday, March 19th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. The restaurants I mentioned are all alumni of the Greater Chatham Initiative's Food Lab Chicago, a community resource uplifting hundreds of Southside restaurants. Nidra Fears is the executive director of the Greater Chatham Initiative. Nidra, we're so happy to have you on CityCast Chicago.
I'll be so glad to be here with you.
I'm so glad to have you in the building. Angel Williams is a co-owner of Tasty Rolls on 79th Street. Angel, welcome to CityCast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
A fun question before we get deep into it. I mean, you've throughout your life probably eaten at countless Southside restaurants. Through the Food Lab, you've got to work with so many more. If you had to say a favorite, we're going to keep Tasty Rolls out of here. Nidra, I'm going to start with you. If you had to say one of your favorite Chicago Southside restaurants, what's one of the first that come to mind?
I'm like a mom. I love all my children, and I would never, ever say that I like one better than the other. They are all different. So I think it depends on, as my dad would say, what you got a taste for.
Okay, then put me on right now. If I got a sweet tooth right now, where's a place I need to pull up to?
Brown Sugar Bakery, of course, and Justice of the Pies would be the ones are my go-to ones.
Angel, I'm so excited to learn more about your restaurant and your story, but let's start with you giving me one of your favorite places as well on the South Side.
So to take your thought process of a sweet, for sure, I'm going to Pookie Crack Cakes.
Come on. What you getting when you go?
I really like the pineapple cake that she makes.
That is on East 47th Street, right off of 47th and Michigan, right down the street from Sean Michelle's homemade ice cream. So you get a little and a lot all at the same time. So the Greater Chatham Initiative generally works to promote economic growth across the neighborhood, the broader South Side, with Black and Brown owned businesses. And part of that includes Food Lab Chicago. Nidra, what's the most surprising or the coolest thing you've learned looking over these last 6 or so cohorts?
I first want to say that 50% of all the businesses, Black businesses on the South Side, are food-related business. So food is a big business on the South Side. We have learned that Greater Chatham, and when I say Greater Chatham, I mean Avalon Park, Auburn Gresham, Chatham, and Greater Grand Crossing, we are the soul food, Caribbean, and West African food district in Chicagoland. So the biggest surprise I had, looking at a big picture point of view, is that we've been here, as you know, Kobe, for decades, but it was until we sat and did the analysis. And what was really important was that big data, cell phone data, that we were able to track who was coming into the neighborhood, where they were coming to eat, and then who was going out of the neighborhood and where they were going to eat. And we kept seeing waves and waves and waves of people coming in and eating in our restaurants. And that's when we said, Eureka, we are this soul food, Caribbean, and West African food district. It was hiding in plain sight. And so this is one of the things where we talk about we have great assets, but we don't know we have those assets until we take the time to analyze and say, this is who we have. This is what we have. This is what makes us special. And this is something that we can celebrate.
Nidra, you talked about turning Greater Chatham and the broader South Side into like a soul food district and destination. Paint that picture for me. What does that look like for you?
We were shocked and pleasantly surprised to learn that 2 million people come as far as Southeast Michigan to Schaumburg and beyond to get our taste profiles. I was on a food panel with folks from Kellogg, and they were saying that they were losing the Black consumer because they didn't have the taste profiles that Black people wanted. And I said, well, you need to come to Chatham. And I know that it is distinctive, as I recall going to Lim's one Sunday afternoon, and there was a woman who was standing in line, and she had a big duffel bag. And I said, what are you doing with that duffel bag? And she says, well, I am leaving here to go to Midway to catch my flight to LA, but I first had to get my gallon of barbecue sauce from Lim's so I could take it home. When you think of Chatham and you think of the myriad of foods that we have, that people want a taste of home. It's our culture, it's our history, it's in our DNA. And so that is why people, we found, typically travel within a 25-mile radius to come and eat in our community. And that is our secret sauce. It's weapon that is, it's food that comforts us, makes us feel, again, that taste of home. And that is what I would say that resonates with folks. And it's also that authenticity. Lim's would not be the same if it was downtown or Tasty Roll. So that people want the tastings and they want the authenticity of being here on the South Side with their people.
For somebody like me, I feel like this is just like common knowledge to me, like the South Side, in particular, has great food, has always had great food my entire life. Do you feel like people are putting the respect on the South Side, on the Greater Chatham neighborhood? Are they giving it the respect it deserves, both in the city and outside?
I think it's getting there. I think that I've had the opportunity to work with the James Beard Award folks, and when they de-emphasize being on the coast and being on select cities on the coast and having that, fine dining with the white tablecloth and napkins and fancy, $500 meals. And when they decided to democratize it and to take it out throughout the nation and to have regional prizes and to see how that has brought the mountain to Mohammed, that people know what food is good in their community. They just didn't know. And now we're spreading the information.
Exactly. This ain't no hidden gem. You just not on. That's right. And that's okay. Let us put you on.
I love that, Kobe. We're putting them on.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Are you holding back on foreign travel plans this year because you're afraid of the language gap? I'm not, because I have Babbel. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I'm learning Spanish on Babbel, getting ready for a trip to Mexico City. Babbel is the language learning app that gets you talking. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Babbel has given me great lessons on getting directions, ordering in a restaurant, and making plans. And of all the things I'm doing in Mexico City, I'm probably most excited about the soccer game we're going to. So I was excited to learn how to cheer from Babbel. That'll be me you'll hear yelling, Fuerza Tigres, Fuerza Tigres! With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Angel, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about soul food, African, Caribbean food, like food from the Black diaspora?
Major misconceptions is that we're not diverse. We're not creative. It's kind of status quo, but that is beyond the opposite. When I tell you our staff, our cooks, and things of that nature, sometimes I have to tell them, okay, we'll ease it into the customer base. Okay, that's a great idea, but let's stay focused on our core items here. So I would definitely say the creativity would be a total misnomer, that we're not creative.
What's an example of something that like kind of just represents like thinking outside the box and like people may not expect, whether they come into your restaurant or any of the others across Greater Chatham?
So some things I would say from our standpoint is the ability for us to actually provide a foot-long egg roll. Who would have thought 12 inches, of goodness into an item as such? And the thought process is, well, would people actually really eat that? And they do. And it's a thought process that is outside of the box, and it's unique. It's an experience. And I feel like a lot of people actually seek out an experience when they are looking for food.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of flavor, the amount of accessibility, and the amount of variety that you are going to get, whether you're on 87th or 83rd, it's really hard to put into words. And again, it's so commonplace for me because like this is where I grew up. Nidra, tell us, what is the Food Lab?
The Food Lab is where we provide a space for restaurateurs and caterers and bakeries to come together and share best practices, learn from each other. We bring in speakers to help them figure out how to do place costing and menu engineering. So normally when you think of business support, you think of generic marketing and business plans and financial statements, and all of that's important. But how that looks in a food-based business is very different than other businesses. And so we wanted to create Food Lab to be a space for mature Black businesses. And that's what we do. And that's what we love.
Right. You do things like menu designs. How do we properly set the price for plating? How do we help people with their accounting, their marketing? You've helped, dozens of restaurants get like a digital footprint in a time when, you got to be out here. You got to be marketing yourself. Tasty Rose is home of the jerk chicken egg roll. I've had the buffalo chicken egg rolls, the Philly egg rolls. Angel, can you tell me about the first time you learned about Food Lab Chicago?
Honestly, the first time I was introduced to the Food Lab was Food Lab 1.0 years ago. During that time, I was introduced to the Greater Chatham Initiative. We actually opened Tasty Rose 2 in the heart of the pandemic. 2020, yes. So we're actually coming up on year 5 in November. So being newer to the neighborhood, if you will, as far as a restaurateur, we were introduced to the Greater Chatham Initiative and to the Food Lab at that time. I'm now a cohort member of 6.0 and partnering with the Greater Chatham Initiative, being a cohort in Food Lab 6.0, as Nidra stated, it's a safe space. It's a space for us to ask those, dumb questions, if you will. We all know that there's no such thing as a dumb question, but being in a space with like-minded individuals, this is self-taught. No one gave me and my team a binder that said, "Hey, go be a restaurateur." So being around not only the team, but again, individuals that have been in the muckety muck of it all, if you will, with growing an organization, just understanding how to operate a business as such in one of the largest cities nationwide has been very, very valuable.
How has that program changed over the last 5 years? How has it grown?
Well, the program changed right off the bat because we were in the middle of COVID. And so we had to work with the restaurateurs and caterers to pivot to online ordering and delivery. And that was just a Herculean task itself. We really worked hard with them to make sure that they got PPP, restaurant, and other grants and loans to make sure that they are sustainable. And that's really important because we at Greater Chatham, we have two pillars. One is business development. And so, of course, the restaurants and Food Lab Chicago epitomizes how to stabilize and help businesses grow. And the second is corridor development, because the corridors are the gateways to our community. They also provide the amenities that the people who live here want. And during COVID, literally, when grocery stores and others, some of them were shuttered, weren't available, couldn't get to, that is where people went to eat. So the restaurants were a utility. They were so necessary.
Obviously, we've talked so much about the business of running a restaurant or a bakery. But when I think of Food Lab, I immediately picture like people in a laboratory. Like I also picture a little top chef. Like when we think about the food itself, are we critiquing plates, telling restaurant owners, oh, maybe add some seasoning here, or, oh, no, maybe you want to try plating it a little bit different? Or are we also kind of breaking down how things taste on the plate?
I don't want you to picture white lab coats, and I don't want you to picture the Food Network critics.
Okay, so they're not making the next mild sauce at the Food Lab.
We like to meet people where they are, and our first tenet, and this reflects my background with the MBA, is that if every plate is profitable, you'll be profitable. And that is what we want. We want businesses that are sustainable, where the owner is paying him or herself a living wage, providing health benefits, and have enough money so that they can buy their building that they're in or build a restaurant, and so that they can create generational growth. Now, that's what makes my heart pitter-patter, firstly. You'll get there if you can figure out how to be profitable, which is our core tenet. But secondly, obviously, if you don't have good food, you're not, no, I don't care how well you price it, no one's coming for it.
No, Chicago go call you for it. We gonna let you know.
So we definitely give people the tools. So for example, most of our restaurants, they're mature restaurants, so they know how to put out a plate. They know what their taste profile, their patrons want. But what they may not know is how their plate cost is similar to other restaurants. And so we'll do a market study, and we know that our top plates in our community are fried chicken wings and hamburgers and ribs and mac and cheese and
lamb chops.
Right, and lamb chops. And right. And so, and what we do is we do that market study so that they can see that, let's say, a 5-piece chicken wing dinner could go from anywhere from $7.99 to $25.99. And that gives them the understanding of where they are along that continuum. We give them that information. We also tell them who lives in our community, who our foodies are that are going to patronize them around the clock, who our families are, and that we have income bands from families that make $15,000 a year to $150,000 a year. And those respective income brands, types of households can be their patrons so that they know that no matter what they offer, that there's people in the community there's a right price point for their offerings.
Nidra, obviously the Greater Chatham Initiative is supporting all kinds of businesses. What do you think these restaurants in particular not only bring to the neighborhood that makes them so important, but why do we need to keep investing in them long term?
Restaurants really important because when we look at Greater Chatham, next exporter of restaurants, which means that we have restaurants that not only feed our immediate households and workers that live here, we also feed people from outside the community. And so it brings in revenue, and it's nice to have that revenue come in. One of the challenges that we see, and we teach storytelling because chefs go to school and they learn how to cook, but they don't learn how to run a restaurant. And they learn cuisine, and typically it is Italian and French cuisine, but they don't teach Black diaspora cuisine. So they don't teach how to make New Orleans, South, soul food, North Carolinian food, and so Caribbean food, and how that is different. Jamaican is different from the West Indies. And so all of that is something that we teach because if it's not taught and you have not learned it, you may have learned that information of how to cook on your mother's knee or your auntie or your grandmother, but if no one put it in context.
Do you have a sense of just ballpark how many restaurants have opened in the past 5 years or decade in the Greater Chatham area?
I haven't tracked new openings. So the good news is that because of Food Lab, during the COVID crisis, our neighborhood restaurants and caterers, largely 95% of the ones that we track, survive. So that was the great news. And
Yes,
that was because of Food Lab.
I mean, when you've got restaurants like a Soul Veg City that's been there for 40 years, a Limbs that's been there for 50 plus years, how do you leverage that history, that success to bring up new restaurateurs like Angel and others who are maybe trying to get on their feet for the first time? How are you building those connections between the flag bearers and the new school?
So we do have those connectors because in the cohorts, we have people who have been in business for 3 years and we have people who've been in business for 20 years. And they like talking to each other because each of them brings their own point of view, their history, their specialties, their personalities. We also have a Food Lab advisory committee that has an overview of people who are in the Black and brown food businesses all over Chicago. And so not only do we get a view of what's going on in the Black community, but also what's going on with our Mexican and Chinese sisters and brother restaurateurs and caterers, which right now are really hurting because of ICE. Their business has really plummeted. And so thinking about how we can work with them shoulder to shoulder to help lessen their load as they go through this really uncertain time.
Angel, getting to learn from restaurants that have been in the neighborhood for decades, working alongside people who are getting off of their feet. I mean, you 5 years in. And so how are you both trying to learn from, our elders in the business, but also uplift new neighbors on the nine?
I feel like it's a breath of fresh air because, again, I'm in there with like-minded individuals, and it's very helpful to be able to be a blessing and to get blessed as well from those that have been in this industry for 10, 20 plus years. So being able to impart knowledge and receive that knowledge has been super, super dope. And I really love being a participant.
Hey, I want to thank both of y'all for making time for CityCast Chicago. Angel Williams is a co-owner of Tasty Rolls. Please visit the site on 79th Street. Angel, thank you for showing up to CityCast Chicago today.
Thank you for having me.
Nidra Fears is the executive director of the Greater Chatham Initiative. Nidra, thank you so much for making time.
Kobe, it was fun and pleasurable. Thank you.
The Greater Chatham Initiative is hosting a community pop-up produce giveaway this Friday from noon to 2 p.m. at 87th and Langley. Before we get out of here, make sure you bookmark our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can catch up on old podcast episodes and articles you may have missed. You can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago. You can save our neighborhood and walking guides for a brighter day. You can also become a member of CityCast Chicago. Not only do you get ad-free listening, you get to clean out them podcast suggestions in your feed, and you'll get a members-only events email every single week. We got some other special perks, so go ahead and sign up. Throw us a little bit of coin. Now, you know we can't wrap things up without some good news. I'm in the middle of the week, but I had to give a shout out to the Diet Eagles over in Washington Park, who raised the first state basketball championship in the school's history over the weekend. Chicago Hope Academy also brought home their first state title. Big love to Chicago legend Ronnie Fields. And hey, shout out to Taiwan Hunter, who went off in yet another state tournament game. Also, we ain't forget about you, DePaul College Prep, who knocked off Brother Rice in a close-ass double overtime game to hang their third consecutive banner. It was a big night for Chicago down at the state tournament. And so I'm happy for all of these schools, all of these fan bases. Big love to all of y'all. Speaking of sports, tomorrow we're going to be talking about Chicago's pro teams and if they worth paying the price of admission. You ain't going to want to miss this one. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.